Society spent the last half century teaching women one very simple, very dangerous message: men are the enemy. They told women that men are oppressors by birth, that masculinity itself is some kind of defect, that the very traits that built civilization, protected families, and kept the world turning were suddenly toxic. And millions of women believed it. They repeated it. They marched for it. They posted it. They weaponized it in courtrooms, and it's just in classrooms, in boardrooms, and in bedrooms. And now, right now, as the bills pile up, as the grocery prices climb higher than most rent payments used to be, as the loneliness statistics hit record highs, women are starting to feel the consequences of that message in real time. If you stay until the very end of this video, I'm going to show you the exact moment the tide turned forever, the moment millions of men looked at the deal on the table, looked at the risk, looked at the nonstop blame, and quietly said, no, thank you, and walked away for good. You're not going to want to miss that moment, because once you see it, you can never unsee it. If you're new here, or if you've been riding with me for a while and you want more of this no filter angry guy content, smash that like button right now, share this video with every man you know who's waking up, and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss when I drop another one of these. And listen, if you're serious about protecting everything you've worked for, about building real wealth in this chaos, about learning how to move, store, and grow your money outside of a system that's actively working against you, then you need to get yourself over to Angry's Crypto Academy. The full step-by-step academy is linked in the description below. We teach you exactly how to buy, sell, trade, and most importantly, safeguard your assets in a world that no longer plays fair. Click that link right now and get started today. And if these videos are hitting home, if they're waking you up, or at least making you think twice, then do me a solid and buy me a Red Bull through the link in the description. Every can keeps the rage-fueled truth coming. Let's get into it. Picture this. It's the early 1970s. The second wave feminist revolution is in full swing. Books are being written, manifestos are being printed, consciousness-raising groups are meeting in living rooms across the Western world. And the core message that keeps getting repeated over and over again is that the traditional family structure, the traditional gender roles, the traditional expectations placed on men were nothing more than a giant prison for women. Fair enough, some of those criticisms had merit. Some of the old arrangements were rigid, some were unfair, some needed to change. Nobody with a functioning brain is arguing for a return to 1954. But here's where it went off the rails. Instead of saying, let's update the contract so it works better for everyone, the message mutated into something far darker. Men themselves are the problem, not the system, not the outdated rules. The men, their nature, their strength, their sexuality, their protective instincts. All of it was framed as oppression wearing a suit. And because human beings love simple narratives, especially when those narratives come with moral superiority and a built-in scapegoat, that message spread like wildfire. Universities taught it, Hollywood scripted it, politicians campaigned on it, HR departments turned it into policy. And an entire generation of young women grew up absolutely convinced that men were the enemy, holding them back from their true potential. And fast forward 20, 30, 40 years. The messaging never stopped. It only got louder. Every year there was a new hashtag, a new viral campaign, a new celebrity tearfully recounting how all men were trash. The phrase, the future is female, stopped being aspirational and started sounding like a threat. Men were told in 1,000 different ways that the very act of being male was now a moral failing that required constant apology, constant self-flagellation, constant proof that you were one of the good ones, whatever that meant this week. And what did men do? At first, most tried to adapt. They tried to be the supportive partner. They read the articles. They went to the workshops. They learned to say toxic masculinity without rolling their eyes. They cheered when their girlfriends got promoted. They took paternity leave. They split the chores 50-50, then 60-40, then 70-30, just to keep the peace. They swallowed the lectures. They bit their tongues when the goalposts moved again. But peace never came, because no matter how much men bent, no matter how much they gave, the cultural message never updated to, okay, thank you, we're good now. It only got more extreme. Believe all women became believe women. No questions asked. A single anonymous accusation could end a career overnight. Dating became marriage. Even casual conversation became a legal and social minefield. The juice was no longer worth the squeeze. The risk was no longer worth the reward. And then something quiet started happening. Men started disappearing, and not dramatically, not with press conferences or manifestos. They just stopped showing up, stopped pursuing, stopped proposing, stopped caping, stopped volunteering to be the hero in a story that now painted them as the villain by default. They went ghost in the most peaceful way possible. They focused on the gym, on their money, on their friendships, on their peace. They built home gyms, bought dogs, learned to cook, traveled with the boys, stacked crypto, started businesses, and quietly exited the game. The statistics started telling the story that nobody in the mainstream wanted to report. Marriage rates collapsed to historic lows. Birth rates in the West fell off a cliff. Young men started opting out of college in record numbers because they looked at the price tag, looked at the anti male environment, looked at the debt, and said, hard pass. The percentage of men under 30 who report having no intimate activity in the past year skyrocketed. And every single one of those numbers is still trending in the same direction, faster every year. Meanwhile, the messaging never adjusted. The articles kept coming, though. Where have all the good men gone? The talking heads on morning television kept asking why men weren't stepping up anymore. The think pieces blamed video games, blamed porn, blamed Andrew Tate, blamed everything except the one variable nobody was allowed to name out loud: decades of nonstop cultural hostility aimed directly at men and boys. And now, here we are in 2025. The economy is punishing. Inflation has been eating paychecks alive for years. Rents in major cities have doubled since 2019. Groceries cost more than car payments for a lot of people. And who is feeling this pain the hardest right now? Single women, especially single women in their late 30s, 40s, and 50s who followed the have it all script to the letter. They got the degrees, they got the careers, they traveled, they dated casually for years because they were told commitment was a trap invented by the patriarchy. They froze their eggs, they bought the condo, they posted the girl boss memes, and now the biological clock isn't ticking anymore. It's screaming. The dating apps are wastelands. The good men they rejected in their 20s and early 30s are either married with kids or they've checked out completely. And the government that spent decades telling women they didn't need men isn't writing any bailout checks. The same government that funded the university departments teaching young women that men are the root of all evil, the same government that changed family court laws to make marriage a financial death sentence for most men, the same government that looked the other way while boys were falling behind in school at every level, that government is now shrugging and saying, sorry, we're broke. No safety net, no cavalry, no white knight riding in to save the day, because the white knights were told for 50 straight years that showing up to save the day makes you a misogynist. So they stopped showing up. And here's the part that keeps me up at night. Not because I'm angry, although I am, but because it's so painfully predictable. Women are now starting to ask out loud, where did all the men go? And the answer is staring them right in the face. They went exactly where you told them to go. You told them they weren't needed. You told them their protection was oppression. You told them their provision was patriarchal control. You told them their presence was the problem. So they left quietly, peacefully, permanently. They didn't burn the system down. They didn't start a revolution. They just walked away. and built a new life that doesn't require your approval. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. Your validation or your permission. And the craziest part, most of them have never been happier. Their stress levels are down, their bank accounts are up, their mental health is better than it's been in decades. They sleep like babies at night, knowing nobody can ruin their life with a single phone call or a viral post. This is the great irony that nobody saw coming 20 years ago. The freer men become from the old expectations, the happier they report being. The more they walk away, the more peace they find. And the more women cling to the old narrative that got us here, the more isolated and struggling they become. I want you to really let that sink in. The very ideology that promised women liberation has now delivered them into a reality where many can't afford basic necessities without a second income that no longer exists because the men who used to provide it were driven away by that same ideology. And before anyone comes in the comments with the predictable not all women talking points, save it. Nobody successful ever got rich betting on the exception. We're talking about cultural currents, about the dominant messaging that shaped two generations. Exceptions don't move the statistics. Exceptions don't collapse marriage rates. Exceptions don't create a society where 1 in 3 men under 30 hasn't touched a woman in the past year. The rule created the reality we're all living in right now. And that reality is only accelerating. Every single day, more men wake up, look around, do the math, and join the walkaway movement. They see their buddies get taken to the cleaners in family court. They see false accusations destroy lives overnight. They see the dating market reward the worst behavior imaginable. They see the culture still blaming them for everything while asking nothing of anyone else. And they make the most rational decision a man can make in 2025: protect your peace at all costs. So here we are. The bill has come due. And the people who spent 50 years telling men to sit down, shut up, and pay for everything are now discovering what happens when men actually listen. Now let's go deeper. Let's walk through the exact timeline of how we got here, because this didn't happen overnight. This was a slow, deliberate 50-year demolition project, and every brick that was removed was celebrated as progress at the time. I want you to see the steps one by one. So when someone tries to tell you this was inevitable or random or just economic anxiety, you can point to the receipts and say, no, this was engineered. And here's the blueprint. And it starts in the universities in the late 1960s and early 1970s. The first women's studies departments are created. That's not a conspiracy, that's just history. The problem wasn't that they existed. The problem was what they taught as unquestionable truth. The foundational texts of second wave feminism weren't just critiquing unfair laws or glass ceilings. They were arguing that the entire Western family structure was a system of gendered violence designed to keep women subservient. They taught that heterosexuality itself was suspect, that marriage was legalized assault, that children were a burden imposed by men to keep women trapped. Those ideas didn't stay in the ivory tower. They became required reading in teacher colleges. Those teachers went out and taught your moms. Your moms taught you. And by the 1990s, those ideas were in every public school health class, every corporate diversity training, every episode of Oprah. The message was no longer, let's fix what's broken. The message was, burn it all down because men built it and men are the problem. Then came the 1990s and the rise of girl power. On the surface, it looked harmless, like Spice Girls, Destiny's Child, independent women, all that. And again, nobody's mad that women wanted to feel strong. The poison was in the subtext. You don't need a man. You never needed a man. Any woman who chooses to center a man in her life is a traitor to the cause. The songs, the movies, the magazines, all of it drilled the same idea into teenage girls. The ultimate flex is having zero reliance on men for anything: emotional support, financial support, physical protection, none of it. By the early 2000s, that message had fully metastasized. You had shows like Sex and the City portraying marriage as something you settle for only after you've lived your best life into your late 30s. You had celebrities bragging about being too independent for relationships. You had entire blogs dedicated to lists of why men were obsolete. And every time a man pushed back even mildly, he was labeled fragile, insecure, threatened by strong women. Then the 2010s arrived and the internet supercharged everything. Social media gave every resentful voice a megaphone. Twitter became the coliseum where men were fed to the lions daily. One viral thread accusing a man of anything, anything at all, could ruin him before sunrise. The phrase, men are trash, trended so often it might as well have been the platform's slogan. And the worst part, most men just took it. They laughed along. They retweeted it with crying emojis. They called themselves trash first so nobody else could. They thought if they showed they were one of the good ones, they'd be spared. They weren't spared. Nobody was spared. The rules kept changing. You could be the most progressive, feminist allied man on earth, and one day you'd use the wrong word, like the wrong person 10 years ago. Failed to read the new 400-page terms of service for acceptable male behavior, and you were done, canceled, unemployed, unpersoned. That's when the smart ones started doing the math. They looked at marriage and saw Russian roulette with 5 bullets in a 6-chamber gun. They looked at cohabitation and saw all the downside of marriage with none of the upside. They looked at dating and saw apps where 80% of women were chasing the same top 5% of men while the rest were invisible. They looked at fatherhood and saw family courts that treat fathers like walking ATMs with weekend visitation if they're lucky. They looked at the culture and saw a nonstop blame campaign that never ended and never rewarded compliance. And they asked one simple question: what exactly do I get out of this deal that is worth this level of risk? And for the first time in modern history, millions of men couldn't come up with an answer that made sense. That was the turning point. That was the exact moment I promised you at the beginning of this video. It wasn't one event. It wasn't one hashtag. It was the quiet realization, spreading man to man, forum to forum, group chat to group chat, that the social contract had been shredded and replaced with a new one that read in big bold letters, your obligation remains the same. Your rights have been revoked. And once enough men saw that contract for what it was, the walkaway began in earnest. You can actually track it in the data like a slow moving tsunami. In 2014, the percentage of men aged 21 to 30 who reported no intimate activity in the past year was around 18%. By 2018, it was 28%. By 2021, it was 31%. By 2023, some studies were showing it north of 40% in certain countries. That's not a blip. That's not incels in their mom's basement. That is a cultural earthquake. And it's not just intimacy. Look at marriage. In 1970, 85% of 30-year-old men in America were married. Today, that number is under 30%. Under 30. And every year it drops further. Japan is ahead of the curve. Their marriage rate is collapsing so fast, they're literally running out of people. South Korea just recorded the lowest birth rate in recorded human history, 0.72 children per woman. And every Western country is sprinting in the same direction. But here's what nobody wants to say out loud: men aren't miserable about this. Women are starting to sound the alarm, but men, most of the ones who've walked away, report higher life satisfaction than they've ever had. They're lifting heavier, earning more, traveling more, stressing less, sleeping better, and for the first time in their lives, Nobody can destroy everything they've built with a single text message. That's the part that drives the old guard insane. They expected men to beg to come back. They expected tears, desperation, bargaining. Instead, they got silence, peaceful, contented, unbreakable silence. And now the consequences are landing one by one, like dominoes you can set your watch to. First domino, female happiness. Every study since the 1970s has shown the same trend. Women's self reported happiness peaked in the early 1970s and has been in free fall ever since, even as every objective metric of freedom and opportunity has skyrocketed. The more liberated women became from traditional roles, the less happy they became. And nobody in academia wants to touch that data with a 10-foot pole because the implications are radioactive. Second domino, mental health crisis among young women. Anxiety, depression, self harm, all higher than they've ever been. Therapy is now a bigger industry than oil in some countries. And the number one predictor of happiness for women across every study ever done, being in a stable long term relationship with a man they respect. Not career success, not followers, not degrees. A good man. The very thing the culture spent 50 years telling them they didn't need. Third domino, the economic squeeze. Women are now the majority of the workforce in many Western countries, which sounds great until you realize most of those jobs are low wage service jobs, while men quietly dominate the dangerous, high paying trades and tech roles that can actually support a family. So women are working harder than ever, earning less than ever relative to living costs, and discovering that two incomes are now required to achieve what one income used to provide in the 1980s, except they don't have access to that second income anymore because the men who would have provided it are gone. Fourth domino, the fertility cliff. Women are having children later and later, if at all. The average age of first birth in America is now over 30 and climbing, and every year past 35, the odds drop off dramatically. IVF is a billion-dollar industry now, and the success rates are brutal. Women who were told you can have it all, just have kids later, are now staring at empty nurseries and realizing the marketing lied. Fifth domino, the loneliness epidemic. Women initiate 80% of divorces, usually citing, I'm not happy or I need to find myself. They get the house, the kids, the child support, the alimony in many cases. And 10 years later, study after study shows those same women are lonelier, poorer, and less happy than the men they left. The men, they're usually doing just fine. They kept their income, their freedom, their peace. They date younger women who didn't drink the Kool Aid, or they stay single and enjoy their lives. And the craziest part? The culture still refuses to course correct. Even as the walls close in, the articles keep coming. Why won't men commit? The manosphere is radicalizing our boys. 6 reasons he's intimidated by your success. Never once, not once, do they ask the obvious question: what if men are simply responding rationally to the incentives we created? Because that would require accountability. And accountability is the one thing the last 50 years of messaging was designed to make impossible. So here we are. The experiment has run its course, the results are in, and the verdict is brutal. When you spend half a century telling one half of the population that the other half is defective, disposable, and dangerous, eventually the half being demonized figures out they don't need to stick around to be treated like that. Men didn't declare war, they just left the battlefield. And now the battlefield is quiet, eerily quiet. And the people who spent decades cheering for that silence are finally starting to hear how loud it actually is. Now let's get surgical. Let's walk through the exact lies that were sold to women as empowerment, because every single one of them sounded liberating in a TED talk, looked great on a coffee mug, and aged like warm milk in the real world. I'm going to list them one by one. And I want you to picture the 22-year-old version of every woman you know nodding along to these slogans while the older version of herself quietly cries in the car because the math never worked. Lie number one: you can have it all, just not all at the same time. That was the compromise phrase they rolled out when women started noticing the first cracks. Translation: chase the corner office until you're 38, then pivot to motherhood when you're finally ready. Except biology didn't get the memo. Fertility doesn't care about your promotion schedule. By the time most high achieving women decide they're ready, they're staring at egg quality reports that read like a horror novel. And the ones who do manage to have kids late are exhausted, broke from fertility treatments, and trying to parent toddlers while running on 4 hours of sleep and corporate deadlines. That's not having it all. That's having two full-time jobs and zero margin for error. Lie number two: a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. So, cute slogan, terrible life advice. Fish actually die without water, but okay. This one convinced an entire generation that emotional and practical independence from men was not just possible, but morally superior. So women built lives with no room for a partner, no compromise, no softness, because needing someone was weakness. Fast forward 15 years, and the same women are paying dating coaches 5 figures to teach them how to let a man lead, because the high value men they claim to want won't touch the energy they spent a decade cultivating with a 10-foot pole. Lie number three: marriage is just a piece of paper. If it's just a piece of paper, why did we spend 50 years rewriting all the laws around that paper to transfer wealth from men to women on demand? That piece of paper is the only reason most divorced women aren't living in their cars right now. But the messaging told women that committing to a man was selling out. So they delayed, they cohabited instead. They kept one foot out the door just in case. And now they're 42, watching the man they lived with for 8 years marry a 29-year-old within 6 months. Because guess what? He always wanted the piece of paper. He just wouldn't sign it with someone who treated it like a trap. Lie number four: your value is in your career and independence, not your family. So women poured everything into resume bullets and follower counts. They climbed, they grinded, they postponed relationships until they were established. And now the same society that told them a family was optional is quietly panicking because no one is having kids and the pension systems are collapsing. The women who bought the lie hardest are the ones staring at golden retrievers on Christmas morning, wondering why the promotions never hug them back. Lie number five: men will always be there when you're ready. This is the cruelest one. The background assumption baked into every You Go Girl speech was that men would wait on standby, like a rideshare app, ready whenever Queen Majesty decided it was time. Except men have phones too. They saw what happened to their dads, their uncles, their older brothers. They watched the divorce settlements. They read the horror stories. And they decided the wait list is closed indefinitely. Those five lies didn't just float around in the ether. They were weaponized. They were turned into university curricula, into HR policy, into laws, into dating app bios, into entire personalities. And the men who quietly pointed out the contradictions were shouted down as bitter, insecure, or worse. So let's talk about the moment those men stopped arguing. For me, the clearest snapshot is 2018. That was the year the cultural mask slipped completely off. You had the Kavanaugh hearings, where a man's life was almost destroyed on decades old allegations with zero corroboration, and half the country cheered. You had the American Psychological Association declaring traditional masculinity itself a mental disorder. You had the Gillette commercial lecturing men about behavior most men had already abandoned decades ago. You had article after article announcing that the future was female and men needed to get out of the way. And in the middle of all that noise, something beautiful happened, and men stopped clapping. They stopped defending themselves. They stopped trying to prove they were the good ones. They stopped caring what the blue check crowd thought of them. They looked at the endless moving goalposts, shrugged, and said, "Cool story. I'm going to the gym." That was the real red pill moment. Not some YouTube guru screaming in a Lamborghini. It was millions of regular guys in real time realizing that no amount of compliance would ever be enough. So the only rational move was to withdraw effort completely. And withdraw they did. They withdrew from dating, from marriage, from college, from corporate ladder climbing, from civic engagement, from fatherhood, from the entire script they were handed at birth. And they replaced it with a new script: build muscle, build wealth, build brotherhood. Hey guys, listen up. If you're tired of going through life alone and you want real brotherhood with men who actually think and grind like you, then check out Angry Guys Clubhouse. It's a community built around brotherhood, passive income, business insights, and even expat living. Plus, you get access to our private men's chat where real conversations happen every day. And when you sign up, you'll get the passive income blueprint and the expat blueprint free just for joining. Don't wait. The link is in the description. Go check it out now. Build peace, nothing else. And the craziest part, the system didn't even notice at first because the system still had enough momentum, enough older men still playing by the old rules, enough inertia to keep the lights on. But that inertia is almost gone now. We're in the lag phase, the phase where the consequences haven't fully landed yet for most people. But they're coming. You can feel it in the air, like humidity before a storm. You see it in the dating apps where the average woman now gets 200 likes in 24 hours and still can't find one man worth meeting in person because the men worth having deleted the apps years ago. You see it in the divorce attorneys who used to brag about bleeding men dry and are now quietly pivoting because their phones stopped ringing. Men aren't getting married anymore. You see it in the corporate diversity programs that can't figure out why male applicants dried up overnight. You see it in the birth rate headlines that went from concern to national emergency in less than 5 years. You see it in the quiet desperation starting to creep into women's voices when they talk about dating in 2025. The bravado is still there, but it's thinner now. The jokes about being a dog mom or married to my career land differently when you're 39, and the group chat stops getting invites to baby showers. And you see it most of all in the comment sections of videos exactly like this one, where women show up furious, calling men weak, entitled, lost, immature. And every single one of those comments gets ratioed into oblivion by men who simply don't care anymore what those women think. That's the new reality. Men's approval is no longer for sale, not at any price. The men who figured this out first are already living in a different world. They're the ones with the home gyms and the investment accounts and the passports and the friend groups that look like frat houses at 40. They're the ones dating younger women who never swallowed the lies, or they're happily single and wouldn't trade places with their married friends for $1 billion. They're the ones who watch society burn the bridge and then act confused when nobody wants to swim the river to get back. Now let's bring this home with real stories, not statistics, not theories, real men I know personally, or whose stories have been shared with me by the thousands in DMs, emails, and comments over the last 5 years. These are the guys who saw the script, read the fine print, and chose a different ending. And once you hear these, you'll understand why there is zero chance, zero, that the tide is ever turning back. First guy, let's call him Marcus. 38 years old, software engineer, makes low six figures working remotely from a small mountain town most people have never heard of. 10 years ago, he was engaged to a corporate attorney in Denver. Beautiful woman, smart, driven, the full package on paper. Wedding was planned, deposits paid, the whole thing. Then one night, she sat him down and explained very calmly that she wanted a post-nup that would protect her future earnings and her inheritance just in case. She swore it had nothing to do with trust, it was just smart business. Marcus looked at her, looked at the ring, looked at the life they were about to sign up for, and said, if we need a contract to prove we trust each other before we're even married, we shouldn't get married. He handed the ring back the next weekend, moved 4 states away, and never spoke to her again. Fast forward to today. Marcus owns a 4-bedroom house outright. He lifts 5 days a week, skis on weekends, has a golden retriever named Luna, and dates when he feels like it. Always women under 30 who treat him like a king because they've never been told otherwise. His ex? She's 41 now, still single, still posting gym selfies with captions about healing, still wondering out loud on podcasts why men won't commit. Marcus saw her most recent post, laughed, closed the app, and went to cook steak for his dog. Second guy, Alex, former Army infantry, did 2 tours in Afghanistan, came home, got into law enforcement, married his high school sweetheart the minute he got back, and thought he was living the dream. 10 years and 2 kids later, she decided she wasn't happy anymore. Filed first, moved in with a coworker within 60 days, used the full power of the state to make sure Alex saw his daughters 4 nights a month and paid for everything else. Lost the house he paid for, lost half his pension, lost most of his savings to legal fees. Spent 2 years sleeping on friends' couches while sending 60% of his paycheck to a woman who moved another man into his old bedroom. Alex hit rock bottom, gained 60 pounds, drank too much, almost ate his duty weapon one night. Then one day he woke up, shaved his head, joined a CrossFit box, started therapy, got on TRT, and decided the only person he was ever going to war for again was himself. 5 years later, he's 50 pounds lighter, makes more as a private contractor than he ever did in uniform, owns a duplex free and clear, and sees his daughters every single day because he moved 2 blocks from the old house and simply shows up. His ex still tries to play gatekeeper with the schedule, but the kids are old enough now to call dad themselves. Alex smiles, tells them he loves them, and goes home to his peace. He hasn't been on a single date in 4 years and says he will never, ever risk that pain again. And he's happier than he's ever been in his life. Third guy, Ryan, 29 years old, plumber, pulls in $180,000 a year cash, no degree, no debt, lives in a paid off double wide on 5 acres an hour outside Nashville, lifted, tatted, rides a Harley, has a pit bull named Diesel. Ryan has never had a girlfriend longer than 8 months because every single one eventually hit him with the, so where's this going to talk? And every single time he answered honestly, nowhere, I like you, but I'm not doing the marriage and kids thing. Been watching my buddies lose everything since I was 16. Not my circus, not my monkeys. Most women scream, cry, call him immature, storm out. A few actually respect the honesty and keep things casual. Ryan doesn't care either way. His weekends are dirt bikes, bonfires, and his boys. His bank account grows every month. His stress is non existent. He says if he dies tomorrow, at least he dies free. Multiply those 3 stories by 5 million, and you've got the quietest revolution in human history. These are not outliers anymore. These are the new normal. And the men living this way are not broken. They're not hiding. They're not lost. They're thriving. Their testosterone is up. Their bank accounts are up. Their happiness is up. Their suicide rates are down for the first time in decades. They figured out the game was rigged, burned their invitation, and built a new table where nobody gets to sit unless they add value and respect the rules. And women are now cycling through the 5 stages of grief in real time. And it's playing out exactly the same way every single time. Stage 1, denial. This is just a phase. Men will come back when they grow up. Stage 2, anger. Men are weak, entitled, porn addicted losers who can't handle strong women. Stage 3, bargaining. Sudden flood of TikToks with soft voices and pumpkin spice filters. I'm traditional now. I love to cook. Where are the good men? Stage 4, depression, the quiet years, The cats, the wine, the therapy, the Christmas mornings with just the dog and the Netflix subscription. Stage 5, acceptance. Except true acceptance would require accountability, and that's the one stage most never reach. Instead, they loop back to anger and blame men for not wanting to sign up for a deal that already bankrupted their fathers. Meanwhile, the men who walked away keep walking. Farther every year, they're buying land in red states, learning trades, stacking gold and crypto, building parallel networks. They're forming fight clubs and Bible studies and crypto masterminds and men's retreats that look like Spartan camps. They're teaching the next generation of boys, their nephews, their little brothers, the apprentices at work. One simple truth: your peace is non negotiable, and the data keeps pouring in, confirming this is permanent. 2024 study out of the UK. 45% of men aged 18 to 34 say they are single and not looking to change that ever. Pew Research, 2025. 63% of men under 30 now say they are single, compared to 34% of women the same age. That gap is the widest in recorded history. Japan just announced tax incentives for marriage because the population collapse is now an existential threat. Young Japanese men looked at the offer, laughed, and went back to their anime and part time jobs. South Korea is paying men literal cash bonuses to get married, still not working. Even in religious communities, Mormon birth rates, Hasidic birth rates, Amish birth rates, all plummeting as young men inside those communities discover the internet and realize they have options their grandfathers never had. This is not reversible. You cannot insult, shame, or tax men back into a burning building. And the clock is ticking louder every year. By 2030, the majority of women aged 30 to 45 in most Western cities will be childless and single. By 2040, the pension systems start collapsing under the weight of too many retirees and not enough workers. By 2050, entire European countries will look like giant nursing homes with no nurses because there's nobody left to pay taxes or change the bedpans. The men saw it coming. That's why they left. So where do we go from here? For men watching this, keep walking, double down, lift heavier, earn more, guard your peace. Like it's the last helicopter out of Saigon. Do not negotiate with reality. Do not let guilt or loneliness or social pressure drag you back into the plantation. Your forefathers built the world. You do not owe the people who tore it down a rescue mission. For the women who are finally waking up and realizing the sisterhood sold them a beautiful lie. It's late, but it's not over. Drop the entitlement. Drop the checklist. Drop the attitude. Learn to cook, learn to clean, learn to apologize, learn to admire instead of criticize. Find a man who still has a spark of hope left and bring him 10 times the value you demand. Some of you will make it, most won't. That's just math. And for everyone else watching society come apart at the seams, stock up on popcorn because the next 20 years are going to be the most dramatic reordering of human relationships since the invention of the pill. Everything you were told was permanent is about to disappear. Everything you were told was impossible is about to become the new normal. The men have left the building. The building is on fire, and the fire department is not coming. And now we stare straight into the next 10 years because this story isn't slowing down. It's accelerating. What's coming is no longer theory, no longer warning, no longer if this continues. It's already locked in. The momentum is unstoppable. The only question left is how loud the crash will be when the last illusions finally shatter. 2025 to 2027, the awakening window. These are the final 2 or 3 years where a small percentage of women still have realistic options. The ones who are 28 to 33 right now, who look at the data, swallow the pride, delete the apps, and actually change their behavior. Some of them will still lock down a good man who hasn't fully checked out yet. The rest will spend these years doubling down on the same attitudes that got us here, posting still single, still unbothered content while panic scrolling dating apps at 2 a.m. By 2027, the phrase high value man will officially become a punchline because the supply will be so low in most Western cities that even average men with a job and a gym membership will have options most celebrities had in 2010, 2028 to 2030, the great repricing. Dating markets will openly stratify like real estate zones. Miami, Austin, Nashville, Dubai, Eastern Europe, and parts of Southeast Asia will become the new blue zones for men. Places where women under 30 never drank the poison and still believe in mutual respect, family, and femininity. You'll see waves of Western men in their 30s and 40s quietly relocating with remote income, buying property, and building lives most people back home will call controversial. Meanwhile, New York, Los Angeles, London, Toronto, and Sydney will turn into matriarchal retirement communities before the inhabitants even hit 45. Rents will stay insane, but the nightlife will feel like a funeral with bottle service. 2030 to 2035, the collapse phase. Pension systems in Italy, Spain, Japan, and eventually the United States start missing payments. Governments will try every trick: marriage bounties, tax penalties for single men, forced cohabitation lotteries in some countries. They're already floating the idea in South Korea. None of it will work. The men who could have fixed the numbers checked out 20 years earlier. Birth rates in most of Europe will be under 1.0. Entire school districts will close every year. Hospitals will shutter wings. The phrase demographic winter will stop being academic and start showing up on the Weather Channel next to blizzards. 2035 to 2040, the new tribes. By now, the parallel societies are fully formed. You'll have male-only eco-villages in Idaho and Montana where 20 guys share 1,000 acres, raise cattle, run solar, and host private fight camps. You'll have high-trust religious enclaves, Mormons, Amish, and traditional Catholics, quietly becoming the fastest growing demographics in the West because they're literally the only group still having 4 or 5 kids. You'll have crypto nomad compounds in El Salvador and Portugal, where 150 men live in a gated community with private security, a gym the size of a Costco, and a dating pipeline of women flying in from countries that still teach respect. And then you'll have the urban blue cities, beautiful architecture, amazing restaurants, and a female to male ratio that looks like a WNBA game. And in the middle of all of it, the women who spent 2015 to 2025 calling men dusty and broke will be in their late 40s and 50s, working 2 jobs to keep the lights on in condos they bought at the absolute peak, scrolling Facebook, watching the men they rejected post pictures from Dubai with 25-year-old fiancés who look like Instagram models and call them sir unironically. That's not rage bait. That's just the trajectory we're already on. And the wildest part, the men in those new tribes won't hate women. They won't be bitter. They won't be screaming on podcasts. They'll be too busy living lives most people can't even imagine. They'll have peace most married men from 1995 would have sold their souls for. They'll wake up every day knowing nobody can take their house, their money, their children, or their freedom with a single phone call. They'll have brotherhood deeper than most marriages. They'll have purpose that doesn't depend on female approval. And that's the final gut punch. The system spent 50 years trying to break men, and instead, it accidentally created the happiest, healthiest, wealthiest generation of men in recorded history. Men who want for nothing because they learned to need almost nothing from a society that hated them. So if you're a man watching this right now and some part of you still feels guilt, still feels obligation still hears that little voice whispering, but someone has to fix this. I want you to burn this sentence into your soul. Your peace is not collateral damage in someone else's war. You do not owe your life to a civilization that spent your entire childhood telling you your natural instincts were a disease. You do not owe your future to people who celebrated your destruction. You do not owe your freedom to a system that already wrote you out of the story and then acted shocked when you stopped playing the role. Walk away. Build your body. Build your wealth. Build your brotherhood. Build your faith if that's your path. Guard your seed, your time, your energy, and your heart like they're the last resources on earth, because for you, they are. And if you're a woman who's been watching this whole thing unfold with a knot in your stomach because you're starting to see the cliff you're driving toward, there's still a narrow off ramp. It requires radical humility, radical change, and radical speed, but it exists. Some of you will take it and be happier than you've ever been. Most won't. That's not cruelty, that's consequence. Either way, the age of men sacrificing everything to keep a broken machine running is over. The machine broke itself. The men just finally noticed. So here we are. The experiment is complete. The results are public. And the only thing left to say is this: all roads lead to MWA. Men walking away. What did you think about all of this? Do you agree? Do you see it playing out in your own city, your own friend group, your own family? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Like the video if it hit home. Subscribe if you're not already. Share it with every man who needs to hear that his peace is worth more than their guilt trip. And just remember, all roads lead to MWA, men walking away. Cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.